Accept them in. So hello, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. My name is Todd Labasser, and I'm a visiting assistant professor in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. And I also direct our Sustainability Literacy Institute, which is the home of our campus-wide quality enhancement plan, Sustainability Literacy as a Bridge to Addressing 21st Century Problems. And this is our 5th year of programming around sustainability literacy. And that's within the larger Center for Sustainable Development. And I'm also an alum. I graduated from the College of Charleston in 1997. So it's great to be with some other fellow alum and future alum as well as our undergrads who are joining in. So thanks for being here tonight. So pretty simple run of show. We'll do some introductions, be about 30 minutes of question and answer panel discussion. We'll take a little break. And then after the little break, will be a chance for all of the students to interact with the panelists and ask specific questions, get feedback on strategies related to CVs and cover letters, and just some general coaching on how to approach the job market whenever that is going to be for you as students coming up. So wanted to thank partners on this, our Career Center and Alumni Affairs. And specifically within that, Najima Davis, Washington, who's joining us, and also School of Business with Aaron Halford, who was with Career Centers, now doing stuff with job preparedness and doing amazing stuff in the School of Business as well. And so on behalf of the Center for Sustainable Development, wanted to quickly point out that this is a panel is around, each year we have a CofC Sustain Solves theme because sustainability is such a broad concept. And at the College of Charleston, we define sustainability as 3 systems that interact: social or equity systems, environmental systems, and economic systems. You might also hear that called the triple bottom line of sustainability, or the 3-legged stool model of sustainability, where sustainability is the seat and the legs are social, equity, environmental, economic. So if any of those are too long or too short or compromised or dominating, eventually it will topple and we don't have sustainability. So this year, our CofC Sustain Solves theme is sustainable cities and communities. So our focus as we wrap up the QEP is how do we actually have sustainable communities wherever we live? And we're in Charleston at the College of Charleston. So that's a lot of the focus of our programming as well. So our panelists tonight all can speak to that through their own expertise: sustainability, triple bottom line, social, equity, economic, environmental systems, through their own careers and bringing their education from the college into the careers. So I'm going to quickly introduce them, and then we'll hear a little bit from them, and then we'll have some ongoing questions for about 30 minutes. So we have Fredalyn Frasier, who graduated from the college in 1983, and she is a project director, planning and urban design at Central Atlanta Progress. We have Leah Roder, graduated in 2020, so recent graduate from the School of Business, Finance and Compliance Manager at Climb Fund. We have Walter Cain, who graduated in 1982, is an architect, founder, and principal, Weka Design. Apologies if I mispronounced that, Walter, and we'll hear more what Weka Design is. And last but not least, Chloe Stuber, who I do not know actually when. Chloe, when did you graduate?
In 2019.
Awesome.
From the graduate school.
Graduate school in 2019, excellent. Who's a planner with the City of Charleston in the Preservation and Sustainability Office. So our first question to the panelists, and we can go in the order how I just introduced you to follow this at first, is what work are you doing to create inclusive, resilient, and sustainable communities? So speak a little bit about your biography, your autobiography, what you're doing since graduation, your job that I just listed, and within that, what work you're doing to create inclusive, resilient, and sustainable communities. So Frida Lynn, we will pass it to you to begin, please.
I knew you were going to do that. I said, maybe he's going alphabetically, but no. Greetings from Atlanta, everyone. As Todd mentioned, I'm a project director for planning and urban design with Central Atlanta Progress. And if you're familiar with CIDs or community improvement district, that's where I'm located. So we're primarily focused on the vibrancy and economic vibrancy of downtown, and we have a specific area. My work over the many years as being a planner and urbanist have covered from environmental work with engineering firms to urban design with urban design firms and landscape architecture firms. And I would say the bulk of my work has been focused on the community level. And so when I kind of draw back my experience from the College of Charleston, I reflect on the fact that, I think it says, how does your experience? The College of Charleston is an urban lab, and so just being there really influenced how you can begin to see that push and pull between what makes a community at every level, whether it's the environmental side, when you see the flooding that happens in downtown Charleston, right? Or the economic side, when you see Upper King versus the lower part of King or South of Broad, and how is that development occurring, and is it occurring in such a way that it's facilitating equity in terms of people being able to participate in those systems, right? And then even on a cultural level, what does that look like? And I had the wonderful opportunity to have Mayor Riley as a professor. And if you have someone like that as a professor, this whole idea of that your urban context is that parade. You see that every day. You're engaging in this environment, and there are all these multiple levels. So just being in an urban campus, the town and gown dynamic, the environmental, being on a coastal city, being part of a coastal city. And then, some of these things that, a lot of times we have challenges in terms of touching on, in terms of, the equity pieces. For the longest, when I was at the College of Charleston, and since I'm kind of there early on, way past you guys, much earlier than you guys, it always, I wouldn't say it bothered me. Yeah, I guess it bothered me, but how the upper part of King was always just, didn't have the same level of vibrancy as the rest of King Street, right? And so I'm happy when I return to Charleston, because my family are outside of Charleston in Somerville, that I'm able to see some of that revitalization of that area. My question is just, how deep and broad is that revitalization? So my work has been with kind of helping communities find that balance and opportunities for economic development, as well as social reach within their communities, and what their physical infrastructure looks like, so it's equitable across the city. And that's what the bulk of my work is focused on, either in the Southeast, particularly in Florida, in the Caribbean, and I actually had a project in North Charleston, which was a sustainability and social justice project for 6 communities in North Charleston. So
awesome.
Thank you. The urban lab is my question, is my answer. It's a great place to be able to explore all of these opportunities in sustainability.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so next up is, I believe, Leah, right? And any of our panelists, if you want to put in the chat box a link to either your LinkedIn or websites to who you work for or what you've created, just so students can also access that as they're hearing you speak, that's also something else you can do, please, as well. So Leah, over to you. I believe you were second.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah. I graduated from the College of Charleston this past year with a master's in business administration, specializing in finance. And I now work for a company here in Charleston. We're a nonprofit company called the Climb Fund. So what we do is we give microloans to small businesses and startups within South Carolina. We also partner with local communities to help develop affordable housing units. So to speak to Fredalyn's point about Upper King Street, we partnered with Humanities Foundation, and they're doing a large affordable housing development on not on Upper King, but kind of right off of Upper King Street. And so every single one of our borrowers has been denied financing from traditional funding sources. So our mission is to create access to capital for small businesses and startups as well as affordable housing developments that can't otherwise secure traditional financing. And our goal is to improve economic opportunity, economic justice, and job creation. We were founded in 1979, and in those last 42 years, we have lent $24.3 million, primarily in Charleston, but in the last couple of years, we've expanded over the whole state. And of those dollars lent, about 22% has been lent just in 2020. So we've seen a huge amount of growth and a huge amount of demand as unless you're an existing business that needs a large loan, even if you have fantastic credit, you're just going to get denied by a bank. So we've kind of filled in that gap where there's a huge need for small businesses who need a loan of anywhere from, a couple of $1,000s to $100,000. If you go to a bank, they'll just say no based on the size of the dollars that you're requesting. And so since our inception, we've created 1,100 jobs, and we've helped build 472 affordable housing units. Primarily, those have been in downtown Charleston, but we have not all of them, but primarily downtown Charleston, Upper King area. And approximately 95% of our loans are repaid, which in this industry, the average default rate is about 15%. So we're about a third of that at 5%. And that primarily comes from the technical assistance that we provide. So this is really what separates us from traditional funding and what has enabled us to have such a low default rate. So when you're a borrower at the Klein Fund, we don't just give you the funds. We do that, but we also partner with you. And so if you are a new business owner and you need help with QuickBooks, or you need help with accounting or marketing or social media, we will pay contractors to help you. So whatever it is, if we don't have a contractor directly that can help you, we'll find someone that can help you. We have one of our borrowers that's in a lawsuit that's, we feel like wrongfully judged. And so we're helping with the lawyer fees for them. It's a pretty well-known brewery in Charleston. And so we really partner with our borrowers. We want to see them be successful. And our goal is we want to see them graduate to traditional funding where the interest rate is a little bit lower. So our interest rate is about 2 to 11%. We want to see them graduate to more traditional funding where the interest rate is lower. And a lot of our borrowers want to come back to us. We'll have second-time borrowers that qualify for traditional funding, and we have to say, we love you as a client, but you're a success case. You've graduated to that traditional funding, and we need to use those resources for other people who can't get funding from the bank. And so if you ask the question, how are we sustainable? We provide financing to people that can't get financing. They directly create jobs, and small businesses are the backbone of South Carolina. And so we've been able to help create jobs through grants from the federal government. We're able to provide technical assistance and to support to our borrowers.
Awesome. Fantastic work. I've not heard of Klein before, so that's amazing to hear about. And we'll come back and hear some more from you as well as we get going through the panel. Walter, I think you were next.
Okay, thanks. So I'm coming at sustainability through architecture. So I have my own little firm in New York City. We do work in and around New York City, mostly residential architecture. And so it turns out that buildings contribute something like almost half of carbon emissions globally. And everybody knows carbon emissions are the big contributor to global warming, which has created all kinds of problems for resilience and which sort of overwhelmingly affects people with lesser means. So if you can work on climate change and trying to stop sort of heavy carbon emissions, then it benefits everyone in the world, but disproportionately benefits people that have less means. And so it turns out that buildings are responsible for something like half of carbon emissions. And most architects are working on, we know how to do things like energy efficient buildings with, sort of energy smart appliances and air conditioning and good windows that keep the heat in and all this kind of stuff. But the real culprit that very few people have been working on to date is the building materials themselves. So what we do is we're really working on projects, built projects, using building materials that are low carbon. It's really hard to do. There's not a playbook for how to do this. There are lots of people working on this problem. And how we're coming about, I want to build. I want to show that it's not some theoretical calculation, but it's actually you can build with less carbon. So, for example, one of the things I'm working on is reusing old materials. So this is something, it's the most obvious thing to do, but not a lot of people do it. And so I actually gave a presentation last night at the kind of national organization called Build Reuse, which is the national organization for people thinking about this problem. So we've done some interesting things in New York to try to raise awareness, because not a lot of architects are thinking about the carbon footprint of their building materials, and almost nobody's thinking about reusing old building materials. So we did this crazy thing where we took a loft apartment, which was going to be renovated, and it needed to be gutted. And we took 2 months with 2 other fellows and myself, and we left all the detritus there. We demolished it. We gutted it. It was 36 tons of material. We left it there, and we made art from it. We turned the whole place into this gutted floor into an art gallery. And we had hundreds of people come visit. We opened it to the public. I did a documentary video about it. It was called Demo, and it got a lot of attention. And it was kind of a stunt to raise awareness of this. Now, how on earth did I get to that from the College of Charleston? So I'm actually a second career architect. I was an English major at the college, also was an exchange student in Japan for a year. I also was a singer, studied voice. I actually sang the national anthem at my graduation in 1982. So nice people would call me a Renaissance man, but the truth was I was just a mess. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I wound up getting an MBA in finance, spending 27 years in finance, and then retiring early to go back and get a master's in architecture and pursue architecture as a second career. So I guess what I got from the College of Charleston was a really well-rounded education that served me well in all these different sort of phases of my career.
Great, thanks for that. And last but not least, Chloe, please, over to you.
I'm Chloe Stuber, and as Todd said, I am a planner with the City of Charleston. I am also going to name a couple of other things that I'm involved with, and City of Charleston planning role is certainly my full-time job, was my career, so to speak, but I definitely pull from the other things that I'm involved with, the other roles that I have in the community, and they inform my work very much so. So in addition to being the planner of the City of Charleston, I'm also the vice board chair of a local organization called the Charleston Community Research to Action Board. So we do environmental justice research with community-led participatory research and citizen science. We partner with local universities, including the College of Charleston, and we are based in the Neck area, working with several communities there that are bearing the brunt of environmental injustice in our region. And I am also a consulting planner with a group based out of Buncombe County in Western North Carolina. The group is called Poder Emma, and I'll put information for all these groups there. And they are doing some really innovative work, doing a community-led planning process with anti-displacement at the forefront of it. So protections before investment in their communities is what they're calling for. So I'm supporting the planning aspects of that effort. So I graduated in 2019 from the department with my master's in public administration, the College of Charleston. And prior to going back to graduate school, I worked in the nonprofit sector for about 6 years, mostly just working with various grassroots level community-based groups that did not have access to traditional funding. So in various different roles, I was supporting their work, helping to advance their efforts, whether it be funding or training or networking, to support those community-led efforts on the ground. So that's been the key theme of all of my roles, and something I still bring to what I do today. And I think is at the core of the triple bottom line is having those who are most impacted by climate change and by economic inequities in our society, that they, how am I supporting efforts for them to have agency in bringing the solutions and being part of the decision making. And yeah, I'll keep it short because I know we have a lot of other questions to go through.
Well, thank you, y'all. Amazing the work all four of you are doing. Really inspired already. So some nitty-gritty practical type questions. So students on the call, these are some really important questions that we've come up with that hopefully the answers will help you as you think forward to what comes next. And the first one, and again, we'll just follow the same order and answers is, what will make students who wish to work in this space competitive in the workforce? What skills, programs, classes, or certifications are relevant to sort of your field and getting your foot in the door? And I'll put that in the chat box as well, so everybody remembers that as we talk about this over the next few minutes. So Fredalyn, we'll start with you. And again, what will make students who wish to work in this space competitive in the workforce? What skills, programs, classes, and or certifications are relevant to such competitiveness?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's really going to be, depending on your area of focus. I mean, there's some basic skill sets that everyone should, take away because the field is so wide and there's so many areas of pursuit that you're going to want to, once you've identified whatever your niche is and where you want to really shine in terms of your talents, you'll want to refine and pick up skills specific to that. And by that, I mean, so, if you're more about the public realm and the built environment, then there are things that you want to look at in the urban design field. I mean, if it's economic development, you may be like, Leah here and do something on the side of the banking and finance. Where I am now, we cover all of those. So we have, we have the technical assistance for neighborhoods that are and churches that are what we call cash poor. I mean, land rich, but cash poor. And so, there are so many different areas that you can focus on, but I would just start at, okay, here are some foundational things that you want to walk away with, right? And the first thing is, the critical thinking skills. I know you probably hear that a lot, but that's very important in terms of when you're presented with work, how you digest that and you're able to distill it into meaningful information. And so that's a really important skill to have. The other part is, being able to take very complex ideas and thoughts and topics and make them, present them in a way that are digestible to your audience, regardless of your audience, right? So you need to be able to take this information and present it in such a way that it's not all tech heavy. There's going to be a lot of technical work behind the scenes, but when you're presenting it, it needs to be really know your audience, right? So understanding kind of the platform in terms of your skills with presenting complex information, and then also being able to, I think some of the other skills that have come really in handy with me are just the kind of analytics that you need to have and being able to break down big pieces of data. And so the data analysis side is really important. And so whatever you can do to hone those skills, that's important. And then any type of work around mapping, because the more you're able to take this information and graphically represent it, whether it's a map or whether it's a cool info, now I'm not escaping me now, but you know what I'm talking about, infographic. All of those things are important, because you're not gonna give data sheets to people, to whoever you're presenting to, right? So being able to take that information and distill it in a way that the community or whoever you're presenting to, whether it's a board, whether it's a citizen, or whether it's a neighborhood association, being able to present that information in a graphic way, in a way that they can understand it, is important. And a lot of people think that that's may not pay a lot of attention to those skills, but they're really important if you want to be successful in conveying what you're trying to do. And if you get caught up in technical jargon, then you've lost your audience. So making sure that you have those technical skills, yes, but then making sure that you also know how to translate that in a way that your audience can digest it and understand it and walk away with a broader and greater understanding of what you just shared. And that's all for me.
Great. Leah, over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say sustainability spreads into every industry. So I would suggest just focusing on what your interests are and what you're passionate and excited about. And focus on taking classes or certifications in those areas. I really like numbers and kind of the business aspect of it. So that's kind of the route that I went. And then if you want to work in, you know, a nonprofit or something with sustainability, I would say your easiest foot in the door is to align with the mission of the company that you're interviewing with. For example, the company that I work at now, I mean, there were a handful of people that applied who were more qualified than me, but I think part of the reason that I got the job is I really aligned well with what the mission and vision of the company was. And I think, you know, people who are passionate about sustainability and who are hiring people with that mission-oriented mindset want to hire people who align with that. And the other thing that I would suggest is, this is something that I really struggled with, is the sooner that you can get clear and concise about what you want to do or what you need help with, the sooner you can get that help. And don't be afraid to ask for that help. I think that was probably the biggest hurdle and skill that I learned when I was getting my MBA, is don't be afraid to ask for help, because people want to help you, but you need to give them information about what you need. You can't just say like, oh, I want to work in finance, I like numbers. Like, that's not clear enough. Make it really easy and clear for someone who has the resources to say, you know, I want to work in lending and nonprofit, I want to learn XYZ. And then they can say, oh, I can't help you with that, but I know someone who can. So the sooner you can kind of funnel it down, the easier it is for people to help you. And they do want to help you. I would say 99.9% of people want to help.
Great, thank you. Walter, same question, please.
Sure. Well, architecture's technical, and there's specific degrees you need if you want to practice architecture. So I'm not going to really talk about that, because I think it's kind of kind of obvious, but I don't know. This is, I echo a lot of what Fredalyn and Leah both said. For me, when I'm looking, when I think about my own kind of career and when I'm looking to hire somebody, I'm looking for really two things. One is I want to know that the people that anybody I'm interested in having work with me is really creative. And so how you convey that you're talented creatively is something that, you know, takes some creativity, I guess, to express. And so it doesn't have to have anything to do with architecture. You know, it can be if you crochet and you do, you know, if you like, I actually make art out of trash. This is what I do for fun. It sounds really weird, but they're exercises that I do because when I'm trying to reuse building materials, you have to take the material and think about what you can make with it. And it's the same thing if I'm using bottle caps or old plastic bags or whatever. And so when I'm looking to hire somebody, I want to see that kind of spark of whatever it is, you know, that creative, it's sort of credibility as a creative person. And I can't, how you might convey that, it just depends on what your passion is creatively. So if you draw, if you assemble things, if you, or if you're like a really good graphic designer with tools like Photoshop and stuff like that. So that's one thing. And it's hard to explain how I can tell somebody's creative, but I think you just express yourself and don't be afraid to show something weird. Weird is great, you know? So that's one thing. The second thing is I really look for evidence that somebody's able to synthesize disparate information. And I think Fredalyn hinted at this. You know, I have an MBA in finance and then a degree in architecture and kind of a performance kind of history too. So they're you know, I'm all over the place. But what I think, what I try to do is to take all these disparate experiences and use all that information to synthesize, because we're solving problems. Architects solve problems, just like urban planners solve problems, and nonprofit finance, community finance people, you know, solve problems. So that problem solving sometimes involves something out of the blue that you might have read about in a opinion piece in the newspaper or on a blog yesterday, or it might be some experience you had, you know, with your grandparents, or it might be something you had traveling in a foreign country. It's just hard to explain it. So you just never know. But I think I really look for some evidence that somebody's able to take whatever their life experiences are and to draw from that and help put pieces together to solve problems. I'm sorry if that sounds really fuzzy, but that's kind of my take on it. One specific thing is if you're interested in the material realm at all and sustainability, you have to read this book called Cradle to Cradle. It's the kind of reference book for you know, the material sustainability.
Yeah.
I'll put a link to it in the chat.
Yeah, good book. Thanks for that, Walter.
And then Chloe.
Great. Yeah, I wanted to echo the thread of communication and how important that was. And I think Frida Lynn was the first to mention that. I really can't stress that enough, how important communication is. One of the things that is essential in my work is being able to communicate with a very diverse range of stakeholders. So I know that word stakeholders can be sticky, but when you're thinking about, if you're doing any work with communities aren't a monolith. Within a community, you know, who makes up that community, who's part of that community. You're working with people who are in elected office. You're working with residents who, you know, may be new to some of the topics that you're talking about, or may not have the same language to talk about the experiences that you're focusing on you may be working with professionals in the nonprofit world. You're working with a variety of people with a variety of vocabularies and ways of understanding their experiences and with different perspectives. And so I think communication, knowing how to take the complex issues like Frida Lynn was talking about and translate that to a variety of audiences is crucial to any kind of community process. And that is not, that skill can come naturally to people, but that really does take practice. And there's a lot of different things that I think are important to that. One that is key is listening. It seems kind of like a duh thing, but it really is a skill to listen, to deeply listen and understand, to seek to understand what people are trying to communicate. I think that to know your audience, as Frida Lynn said, is also about meeting people where they are. And you may have heard that in terms of community outreach or community engagement, but I think that also applies to your coworkers in the workplace, working across departments, managing up. So understanding where people are and how you can meet them there versus always, if you're expecting people to come to you, meet you at your terms, you're not going to be as flexible. You're not going to be able to be as responsive. And I also wanted to highlight the problem solving nature of planning. And a lot of problem solving, I think research, you're going to have research classes, pay attention. I wish I had paid more attention in some of mine and stuck with some of the statistical analysis, especially research is so, it's a huge part of my job, planning and the other two roles that I mentioned in the community as well, is how do you identify a problem, investigate that problem, how do you plan a research project, and then the analysis and synthesis part of that, how are you bringing in people with varying perspectives to understand that data, to bring the humanity piece, the lived experience piece to that, and then how is that driving whatever solutions you're coming up with. So the skills that the technical hard skills that are part of research and analysis and synthesis are really critical. And I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks, y'all. Follow up. I'm going to assume there's going to be probably some overlap in the answers here, which is fine. I think obviously students who are on the Zoom right now, you should be listening for emergent themes pinging right from all four panelists and really zero in on common pings that you're hearing from everybody. So there's probably going to be some crossover on this one. What key sustainability skills should these graduates highlight on their CV or cover letter? Right. Another, what should they foreground to maybe set them apart as they're hitting the job market in this realm that we've been talking about of sustainability from the college broadly, and starting looping back around to going through the cycle again of the four of you.
I'm going to tease out some really good points that the other panelists have already made that I think just want to put a little more focus around. And the last thing you want to do is have a generic presentation of yourself. It needs to be authentic. We don't need to know all the courses that you've taken, but show how you have taken those learnings and applying to whatever that specific position is. Do not paper wall, cast a 20 different 20 resumes out there and they're all the same. Please make sure that you are, if whatever position that you're pursuing, that you're looking at kind of what, I think it was Leah was saying, how do you align with this organization? I mean, and then demonstrate how your skills, not just the courses that you took, but where you have passion, where your talents align with their organization. So definitely stay away from the generic, this is what I know about resiliency. And this is, really make it personal, make it authentic to you, and show how you align with that organization. You have the skills there and there's a way to present those, but don't make that the forefront, your first introduction to, make the part of your resume. I don't know if you've seen some really good examples. I've seen some good examples where before you just jump off, you kind of speak to how you align. Maybe this is in the cover letter, but why you think, your talents fit in your skill set. And I emphasize the talent part because you can take all the courses, but how do you take that and then also apply it to this particular position? So speak to your talent and not just saying, okay, I have skills in this, but how can you apply it to that organization? That's in a nutshell.
I would say there are, in my mind, kind of three key things that I focused on when I was crafting my resume. The first is know your audience. So a resume that you're sending for someone in finance or someone on Wall Street should look very different than, say, a resume that you're sending to an architect or someone in marketing, someone that you'd send to Walter, because his field is very creative. He may want to see something creative, and even if you have a fantastic resume, we'll throw it out before even reading the first line. In kind of the finance numbers area, they kind of like to see that. They want bullet points, black and white. So know your audience of the position that you're going for, because that can get you thrown out before they even read it. Second, I would say focus on skills and accomplishments, and instead of just listing like duties and tasks that you did, like responding to emails, managing people. No one cares about that. They want to have numbers of, this marketing initiative increased our social media reach by 20% in 2 months. Something that you can quantify, makes it a little bit more tangible. And then third is just a simple thing, list it from most to least important, put the least important stuff at the bottom. That's what I got.
Yes, so I agree with everything that was said. Also, I would say just really bring yourself to put yourself in your cover letter or your resume. So honestly, I got my first job because I spoke Japanese. Okay, I was a student abroad, and it had nothing to do. It was a finance job. So my first career was in finance. I have an MBA in finance, and I swear they wanted me because I spoke Japanese. Now I never used it on the job ever, but they just knew that I'd lived abroad and knew how to deal with, from that whole experience. And so so I highlighted that, and it kind of nailed it in terms of getting to the top of the pile. So I think you really want to bring your interests and bring those forward, because everything, I get so many cover letters and they always sound generic, and everybody's always saying why they're the best fit for the job, but they don't. It's a little like, they don't know that much about the job, so how can they say that? So I think the big thing is just to really talk about who you are and highlight anything you have that's kind of unique, and just put it out there. And it's a way to distinguish yourself. I really look for people with a variety of experiences, and so I think it's important to showcase those.
I think it's me, right, Todd? Next. I will be fully transparent. I don't know if I can give great advice on CVs and resumes, because I don't really know how much those had an effect on the jobs that I got. Every job I've gotten, it's been directly connected to relationships that I had. And so, and I know that's not always going to be the case for the jobs that you're applying for. I think I've been really fortunate in that way, but also very intentional. I mean, the seeking out those jobs was as a result of those relationships that I had and the networks that I was in. So it was sort of a natural evolution. But if I were to try and answer the question, I'm trying to answer it another way. If I were to guess at why these people who I was already in relationship with decided that I was a good fit for the positions that they hired me for, I think it would be because a very solutions-oriented person. So, you know, it's thinking creatively and like, okay, that maybe this can't work, but let's try something else. So really always trying to stay focused on, well, what's the solution? How can we move forward? I will also say with an attitude for learning. So this kind of comes back to listening, but you can have read all the books, have all the certificates, but if you're not keeping an open mind to learning new things, adapting to new situations, new contexts, then that can sometimes that long list of certificates and books that you've read can work against you because your head is so full that you don't have any room left. So making sure that you always have room left to learn and have your mind changed. And then one thing that we haven't really talked much about, the equity piece of the triple bottom line. I think more and more organizations are starting to really look more closely directly at the challenges of inclusion and diversity and equity, not just in the work that they're doing, but also internally. And I think one of the first things that is a required sort of prerequisite for that is having literacy of equity and all the, you know, the things that are part of that. So, you know, what does racial equity mean versus just the word equity? And what does racism mean? And what does it mean to dismantle racist systems? And so having the literacy to be able to talk about those things and understand your role in all of that, you know, I guess it depends on the organization and where they are in that spectrum of if they care about that or not. But if you are applying to an organization that is trying to do a better job at addressing those issues, and I think certainly having literacy in that, feeling comfortable talking about it, knowing that it's a lifelong process, I think that is becoming more and more important for people to come with that versus needing, at least coming with that interest and desire to confront those challenges.
Great, thanks y'all. So one more question, and then we'll take a short little break and then let students interact with everybody directly. And this is a simple, quick question. So a simple, short answer is fine. And the question is, what one key skill did you wish you had gotten at CofC that would assist your job now?
Well, I think I'm in the same camp with Walter, where I think my experience at the College of Charleston was just very well-rounded and provided a strong foundation. I think the one thing that was missing is what we're doing here today. And so you guys have this opportunity to interact with those who are practicing. And I think it's critically important that, you know, you find those individuals who are practicing to align yourself with and seek advice, right? Those who are there doing the work are the ones who can help you in terms of your job search and all of those. So what I found is once I graduated, it's like, yeah, you know, I have these skills, I understand, I know where I want to go. How do I then how do I translate this to a real world opportunity? And that's kind of where you have that little hesitancy. And so what's being offered here today is wonderful. And I say good job. And I'm glad that you guys have this kind of opportunity because it's not often afforded in having working with practicing professionals or having a conversation with practicing professionals. It's very important. I'm sure you've had internships and things like that, but it's good to have a broader perspective as well. So I wouldn't say there's anything else I would add. It's just the tail end. How do I transition into the professional world and apply this work that I've now have it, So that's all for me.
For me, it would be, this is kind of very specific just to kind of what I'm doing, but we learned modeling and did a lot of financial modeling throughout the program, but the one thing I guess I would have liked to learn more of it. I felt like we were just getting into the meat of it right as we were graduating. And we learned modeling, but we didn't learn as much about what types of models to use depending on what sector or industry or field you're in. So I felt like we were just getting into the meat of it right as we were graduating. So I will probably take some subsequent classes in modeling.
So Leah, I had that. I went to Wharton and got my MBA there, and I didn't know how to model when I got out of my MBA program, of all the places you'd think you'd learn it there. So but I fault that school, not the College of Charleston, for that. I think the biggest thing I probably didn't know how to do when I graduated from college, it was nothing academic. It was really how to network. And what Chloe was saying, I mean, I just didn't have a clue, because my parents just weren't like that. And I don't know. So I think that's the one thing that I had to learn the hard way kind of later in life.
I think about this a lot, actually, in the planning curriculum in general. So I was fortunately able to get some of this training and practice prior to going into the public administration program at the College of Charleston. And then I did the urban and regional planning certificate. And one skill, or skill that is not taught, but is a central part of the work, is how do you actually do community engagement and outreach? The skills that are involved in doing that. So we've talked about communications already. Unless it was sort of an elective that you were seeking out on your own, this isn't something that was naturally or already built into it, into the program. And thinking about things like how do you facilitate dialogue in a group, conflict resolution skills, facilitation. I already said facilitation. How do you do outreach to a wide variety, or multiple different audiences? What does that look like? How do you set up your meeting so that it's accessible? So just the how of engagement, the skills that are a part of engagement, that's not really currently part of the curriculum at the College of Charleston in planning, at least that I had access to at the time. And I think that you could always learn more. And also, I think my peers would have really benefited a lot from having more direct experience and practice with those really important skills.
Well, thank you all for those great answers and your vulnerability and honesty and sharing of your hard-earned wisdom and what you've been doing since graduating. So we're going to take 2 minutes to just mute yourself, turn your cameras if you want, give a panelist a chance to use the restroom if they have to, just get a little drink of water. Students, we invite you to please stay. When we come back, again, just a quick little break, let our panelists stretch out a little bit. We'll open up to you all to be able to interact with the panelists, ask some questions, follow up stuff on anything you heard. So let's be back here 6:26, and yeah, it's about 2 minutes. I'll be here and open when I unmute myself. We'll begin again.